Number 1. What is experimental unit? The experimental unit is the entity a researcher wants to make inferences about in the population based on the sample in the experiment. Thus, this is the entity for which adequate replication is needed. The sample size is the number of experimental unit per group. If the experimental unit is not identified correctly, there is a risk that the number is overestimated, which might invalidate the result of the statistical analysis and the conclusion. Commonly, the experimental unit is the individual animal, and each animal is allocated to a particular treatment group independently of other animal. Number 2. What do you mean by experimental subunit? The smallest division of the experimental material such that any two experimental units can receive different treatments. Number 3. Under which condition can tank be used as experimental unit, and under which condition can individual fish of the tank be used? The condition can tanks be used as experimental unit is treatment because it is a specific experimental condition applied to the unit, or the specific condition applied to the individual as an experimental unit, and it can be multiple treatment in one experiment if an experiment has several explanatory variables. A treatment is a combination of specific values of these variables. Practical exercise 2. Example 1. If a researcher is planning to conduct an experiment to determine the effect of 4 different types of hormones in spawning, what should be the experimental unit, and which experimental system should be used? How many of the experimental unit and the system would you suggest using? I think if a researcher is planning to conduct an experiment to determine the effect of 4 different types of hormones in spawning, the experimental unit and experimental system should be used for experiment the tank or aquarium because it is suitable and they are easy to manage, and also it is one of the individual fish that can be experimental unit or replicates if all the fish are tagged. Example number 2. You are planning to conduct an experiment in Ayrton Pond to compare two strains of tilapia for breeding performance. How could you use this pond for your trial? Estimate the number of each strain of fish needed on different plants. It is important to have water, climate, land, and electricity for the experiment. Tanks or aquarium are suitable because they are easy.